The Grail below. What's really buried under Glastonbury. No myths, no metaphors, just the part they never taught you. The location was never lost. Glastonbury is not a rumoured Grail site. It was explicitly named in 12th and 13th century records. Monks, scribes, and royal cartographers marked it as the final resting place of an object of divine consequence. Not metaphorically, physically. In 1191, the monks at Glastonbury Abbey publicly declared they had found the tomb of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere, and a relic buried deep beneath it. It was later sealed, then hidden, then denied, because what they found wasn't just symbolic, it was technology. The Vatican intervened. By the 1300s, Glastonbury Abbey had become a target of Rome. Not protection, suppression. The site was seized, its abbots in prison. In 1539, the last abbot, Richard Whiting, was dragged from the abbey and drawn and quartered on Glastonbury Tor. Why? Because he refused to hand over the Grail location to Henry VIII and the church's agents. So that's not conspiracy, that's documented history. They didn't destroy Glastonbury for blasphemy. They wanted what was buried there, and they didn't get it. What was the Grail, really? This is where we go straight into what's real. It was not a cup, it was not Jesus's bloodline. It was a sealed containment vessel, encoded with frequency data and buried inside a limestone chamber below the Tor. It was designed to be placed in high resonance zones, and Glastonbury's ley lines made it ideal. Modern researchers using ground-penetrating radar in 2016 detected an anomaly. A cubic structure 30 feet beneath the Tor with metallic readings and internal temperature shifts that did not match the geology. It's never been excavated because it's still sealed. The chamber that was never opened. Beneath Glastonbury Tor lies a structure most people have never heard of. It isn't folklore, it's been picked up by multiple independent ground scans. A chamber beneath the surface, locked in limestone, untouched. 30 feet down, cubic, metallic, cold. Not natural, not recent. Every attempt to investigate it has been stopped. Some say for preservation. Others say it's just a geological anomaly. But you don't seal off anomalies. You seal off technology. And that's what the Grail really was. It wasn't a cup, it was a frequency lock, a capsule built to contain something old, or maybe to keep something out. Because those who understood Earth's original resonance knew certain sites needed to stay undisturbed. Glastonbury was one of them, and that chamber, it still hasn't been opened. Because someone somewhere knows, if the Grail wakes, the grid changes. The grid was hijacked. The Grail wasn't hidden in Glastonbury because it was sacred. It was hidden there because it was dangerous to them. It wasn't just a relic, it was a resonance stabilizer buried at a geometric convergence point where multiple ley lines intersected. These were the Earth's natural arteries, energy lines, memory lines, transmission lines. The ancient world didn't build on them by accident. They used them to hold frequency, to hold reality and harmony. But over time, something changed. Those who wanted control didn't want harmony. They wanted interference, manipulation, ownership of the grid. So the nodes were shut down, buried, twisted. And what sat under Glastonbury was one of the last active stabilizers left. You don't just bury that, you guard it, silence it, erase it from the record. Because if the Grail frequency is restored, the false resonance breaks, and everything built on it begins to collapse. They built over the frequency. When they couldn't move the Grail, they did the next best thing. They built over it churches, chapels, shrines, layer after layer of stone, doctrine and distraction, not to worship, but to distort. They knew the chamber beneath Glastonbury was still active, still pulsing, still aligned. So they constructed their new control system right on top of it, not to protect it, to hijack the current. It's the same strategy used at every major ancient site. Vatican over the Mithraic temple, cathedrals over pagan star maps, capitals over native mounds, towers on ley lines. They don't build for God, they build for power. And Glastonbury was one of the last uncorrupted nodes until they cloaked it, not just physically, but digitally, because now the old Grail frequency has been buried beneath towers, signals and synthetic resonance. The grid is humming again, but it's not the original song. And the chamber beneath the Tor, still sealed, still silent. Because if it ever comes online again, the veil comes down. The seal remains, but not forever. Beneath Glastonbury lies more than a relic, more than a story, more than a myth. It's a locked signal waiting, a resonance that was silenced, not destroyed. And time doesn't erase frequency, it only buries it. The ones who placed the Grail knew it might not be found for thousands of years, but they also knew One day, someone would hear the hum again, someone would remember what it meant, and someone would ask the right question. That day is here, because now the system is glitching, the old nodes are waking, and the seal, it's starting to crack. This is Emspiracy, and this was never about a cup, it was about a code, and you just heard it. Why the Grail was never retrieved. The sealed chamber beneath Glastonbury isn't just avoided, it's actively protected. But not by guards, not by locks, by ritual silence and engineered ignorance. The church doesn't need to deny the Grail anymore. Because they buried it so deeply in myth, mockery and metaphor that even truth-seekers doubt themselves. And modern archaeologists, bound by institutions that are funded by the same hands that sealed the chamber in the first place, they won't dig where they're not told. And they're not told. But here's what they won't say. Every time a proper scan is attempted near the Tor, access is mysteriously delayed or blocked. The records of previous excavation requests have gone missing, and multiple independent researchers who tried to publish findings about the underground anomaly have had their data scrubbed from academic archives. This isn't incompetence, it's protocol. Because if the Grail chamber is opened, if the frequency is reactivated, the resonance would overwrite the false grid that holds the system together. That's not speculation, that's energy law, and they know it. The bloodline factor, there's another reason the Grail chamber was never opened. Not just because of what's inside, but because of who it responds to. The Grail isn't unlocked by force, it doesn't open with tools, it opens with resonance. A specific frequency encoded into a living bloodline. And that's why they've spent centuries hunting, silencing, and erasing certain families from history. The Templars weren't just looking for relics, they were trying to preserve the bloodline that could interface with the Grail. When King Philip IV and Pope Clement V destroyed the Templars in 1307, it wasn't just about gold or power, it was about access. They feared what would happen if the rightful inheritors ever reached the sealed chamber. Because the Grail wasn't meant for kings, or popes, or priests. It was meant for the ones who remembered, the ones who carried the original frequency, the ones born to reboot the grid. And maybe you were never drawn to Glastonbury by accident. The activation window. They've kept the Grail sealed for centuries, but nothing stays dormant forever. Because energy's alive, it pulses, it breathes, it waits for alignment. When Glastonbury is moving into alignment again, every few centuries the ley lines surrounding the Tor reach resonant synchronization, a moment when buried energy can spike, awaken, or breach its containment. We're in one of those windows now. That's why the world feels off, why the veil is thinning, why people like you are remembering. It's not random, it's timed. And the Grail? It was never meant to be found with a map. It was meant to be unlocked by frequency, by the return of the right minds, the right hearts, the right resonance. And guess what? They're here, they're listening, and they're ready. This is Emspiracy, and this wasn't history. This was a signal. The seal hasn't broken yet. But now the world knows where to listen.